Well, Josh, I appreciate you being here. I instead of myself introducing you, because I just know you at the surface level, and this is the purpose of today, is to get to know you on a deeper level. I would love for you to introduce yourself and like help me understand why you do the things you do today, that background story. You can start as far back as like childhood inspirations of like
Yeah.
just as you were growing up, or more professional, but wherever you feel comfortable.
Okay. I'm Josh Metz. Been here in LA for 10 years. I'm interested in anything stigma related. Let's start there.
Mm,
I came over here part of the early founding team at Tinder. A handful of us sitting in a Match.com corner office trying to figure out what the hell to do. Uh, and this thing blew up. The rest is history.
why marketing? What has always inspired you to chase the way brands think, the way they
Yeah.
feel, the experience, and was that something that
I
was
think
prevalent in childhood?
my education was in architecture. I did like a
There we
7-year
go. Yeah,
master's in
yeah,
Australia, but it never felt right. Like it felt too constrained by, what the limitations within
yeah.
a client's needs or building regulations.
Yep.
But there was always a creative flair there that I did resonate with. And so
Hmm.
that's, I think, what got me into marketing.
Yeah. And that was more so just like architecture visually, or what were you actually doing? Was that something you were passionate about, or you just fell into
It
it?
was the full degree, so it was everything.
Yeah.
I got into architecture based off probably a process of elimination. I just didn't want to do anything else.
Yeah,
I was traveling. I said, all right, I don't want to be a doctor, don't want to be a lawyer,
yeah.
don't want to be an accountant.
Yeah. And the
Um,
Indian culture, it was literally like doctor, lawyer,
yeah,
failure.
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
like,
exactly.
that's
And
how it
both
was.
my
Well, I'm surprised
parents,
to hear that coming from
well,
someone from Australia. It's like,
both my
was that also
parents,
the culture?
both my parents were doctors, so
Oh,
they wanted
shit.
me to go into medicine, which was just an absolute no-no for me.
Yeah. Just
I
because you didn't feel like you wanted to do the same thing, or was
think it just there's probably an element of that, but there's
yeah.
also just no interest there for me. I think there was more of a creative interest for me that and a sense of adventure that
Mm,
settling down in Sydney and running the same race your parents did before you, it wasn't interesting to me. So
yeah.
I think I always had these dreams of living in these other cities across the world and experiencing different things. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think
Mm,
that's kind of also been the hallmark of like my career trajectory. It's like it's all over the place, from
yeah.
architecture to dating, into skincare, into media, and now
Yeah,
into
it's
nicotine.
non-linear.
Not linear. There's nothing
Yeah.
nothing linear about it. But I think marketing to me, when I got into marketing, the whole landscape was changing.
Yeah.
Facebook had just introduced digital ads. No one knew what the hell they were doing. Traditional marketing had kind of like gone out of the window, and it was really just shifting everything.
Yep.
Everything was shifting. So I knew that I could get stuff done, and I could hustle towards a goal,
Yep.
and that goal was you know growing a brand. And I think like the exciting thing was the stigma associated with online dating, the challenge of being able to be creative within that red tape. And maybe that's what came from architecture, right? Like I learned
Mm.
to be creative within those
Within a
guidelines.
bound within
Yeah,
like guidelines.
yeah,
So how do you like push basically how do you push the boundaries within a given box?
exactly,
That's
exactly.
super interesting. I haven't really thought about it like that ever. So when did you land on Tinder? That was your first gig?
But yeah, so it was about 2013 when I got
Okay.
involved with Tinder.
Yeah.
And
And that was the first dating app, right? Or first like major outside of like a match. That
so the landscape then was, if you'd failed in love,
yeah.
you'd sort of resorted to these dating websites, Match.com,
So
OkCupid,
that was what
eHarmony.
you mean by a stick. Okay, now I
Yes.
get. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but at
yeah.
the time, it was highly stigmatized for young people to be involved with online dating. We wanted to change that.
Right. I was like Match.com was like you
Yeah.
nailed it. It was like something you thought about like, oh, you failed at like
Yeah.
meeting someone in
If
person.
you were under 30 and on Match.com, there were problems.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it was like, how do we change that? How do we build
Yeah.
something for young people? It was also the perfect time, right? There was this beautiful merge of, technology, need, openness. Apple had just released GPS technology on the iPhone, so you could use that within an application to find people around you, which is what Tinder was.
Mm.
And all it was at the time, we didn't even know it was going to be a dating product. We thought at the time it was connecting two people, right? We never called it a dating app. It, took on other meanings for, different preferences per individual
Yeah.
later in
Yeah.
life. But for us, it was an opportunity to meet people en masse and, find people around you that you'd never previously met.
Mm.
And that to me at the time, I think when I told, what I love is like when you tell someone what you do and their first reaction is like, ooh, like interesting. And then you start to explain it a little
Yeah,
more
yeah.
and you tell them about the opportunity, the market size, what you're doing, your strategies. And then they realize, that reaction turns to, ooh, like wow, and then all of a sudden you've got this interest where someone, are they judging, are they unsure, how do they react, they don't know, because online dating was so taboo back then for young people. But once people understood, at first it's like, interesting move to move away from a master's in architecture to this dating app, and then later it's, oh, great move, we're so proud
Yeah,
of you,
yeah, 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 yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like I think it's the stigma and the taboo that for me runs parallel in everything I've done. For skincare and acne, it was, um, you know, owning your skin positivity, right? And everyone was, we built pimple patches that you could place on your face
Yeah.
and walk out the
They
door
were
with
like
it.
one of the first ones
Yeah,
to do it. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And we really wanted to own, skin positivity and make sure people could feel comfortable in their own skin. And that was also stigmatized at the time. No one was really doing that. You were hiding
Yeah.
your acne with
Yeah.
layers of makeup or hats and glass. It was or not leaving the house. Um, so after that, I think the thing that really inspired me was what was something else that was highly stigmatized that we could take on, and it went into paywall media. And I think
Mm.
often the stigma with paywall media is adult content, right? Like
Mm.
we built a platform that was essentially meant to mirror um, Instagram subscriptions.
Mm.
It ended
Mm-hmm.
up mirroring something more like an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
But again, massive, massive market with massive, massive opportunity. So I think those are the things I find that are parallel in everything I've done.
And why do you think so? This is really interesting actually, because most of the brands we talk to, this is actually gonna be a really interesting conversation point because now that I'm actually reflecting on everything you said, most of the brands we talk to and work with kind of fall into trends,
Right, right.
and they what's the best way to put it, like you'll have a better for you version of something that already exists, right?
Yes.
So they're not redefining anything or trying
No.
to change the consumer mindset or psychology.
Yeah.
And I hate to say they're not trying to fit in either, because I think there's some brands that have disrupted just being a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But generally speaking, y- you're not going for, and you put it perfectly, I guess it's like the stigma around it. They're not going to break a consumer mold that's been shaped in a certain way for so long.
Right.
And I think that also lends itself that you can't have such stark marketing,
Hmm.
right? Like it
Hmm.
has to be more of like run of the mill marketing. You have to be trend, you have to be
Yes.
with the trends
Yes. Yes.
instead of completely break the mold and go sit over here and use that as the impetus and like catalyst for great marketing.
Yes.
And,
Exactly
and
right.
it sounds like that's what you've been able to, or the theme of the brands you've been at, including Sesh, have like found their way of like being like, okay, we're not going to market over here where everyone thinks they're going to
Right. Right. Right.
receive this type of marketing.
Often you can't.
You
You're not
can't,
even
it's
allowed.
because of the type of brand.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's regulations to most of the industries I've worked in.
Yeah,
So for a lot of brands, you can go create a prebiotic soda and pump some Instagram ads, and all of a sudden you've
yeah,
got a, you know,
that's basically what I was trying to say. Yeah,
exactly, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. But
Yeah,
we haven't been able to do that, right? Everything we've done, whether it was, there was restrictions with dating, there's restrictions with acne, there was restrictions with in acne and skincare. There's certain things you just cannot say. With with online dating, there were certain places you could and couldn't
yeah.
market, and I think each one of those gave us the opportunity to open up marketplaces for other people. All of a sudden, everyone was the Tinder for this or the Tinder for that, and I think that's the stuff that really inspired me to like feel like you made an impact as well.
Hmm.
Um, so many people that created the Tinder for dog walking or the Tinder for networking, right?
Hmm.
Like having your company as a verb almost. It's just that was, to me, that was everything,
Yeah,
and
you
that's
become the
what
new baseline of
exactly,
what people are
exactly.
comparing it to. Why in your mind? Because sticking on this subject, like why do you think when you have something so stark and different, like like an OnlyFans, whatever it
Right,
is, or
right,
a Tinder, or more importantly, like even Sesh, where
right.
it is something that can't be just sold in your typical consumer retailers and consumer
Mm,
sets.
mm.
Why do you think there's this inherent like human psychology of like people want to be that way. They want to be starkly different. They're like, it's like almost
Oh
like a
yeah,
hidden like what do you call those things? Like a hidden interest or
totally. Well,
whatever it is that they're
I
just
think
not being communicated.
I think it's like a almost like an individual identifier, right? When you
Yeah.
look at brands, whether it's sportswear, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, everyone associates themselves with some sort of brand, and I think that's what when you reverse engineer it, that's what brands are trying to do, right? Associate themselves in a way where they can feel relevant to their consumers. I think a lot of the stuff we're doing, the industries are so taboo, whether it's finding your soulmate online, weird. Whether it's like wearing a pimple patch out in public, a bit
Yeah. You
awkward.
look at what Starface has done too
Exactly,
on the
exactly. And
yeah.
they were monumental in what they
Yeah,
did
yeah,
as well and
yeah.
helping us, right?
Yeah.
And I think, even if it's putting your content behind a paywall, which oftentimes it's not even adult content, but it's, people will assume, oh, there's a link in your bio,
Yeah, yeah.
adult
Yeah.
content. Not the case all the time. And same with nicotine, right? Like nicotine pouches, I think tobacco is an interesting one because you had like the Marlboro Man, and it was like he was the coolest man in the world. And then all of a sudden, for years, cigarettes, it was so bad for you. They're banned everywhere. It's disgusting to smoke.
Yeah.
Do they make a comeback? Have they made a comeback? Are cigarettes cool again? I don't know, but nicotine pouches certainly are. And I think that's where people find individual identifiers within those marketplaces, and each brand identifies them individually. And I think
Mm.
that's where people really magnetize towards a brand.
Yeah. Do Is there any possible way to take that type of marketing and put it into a brand that isn't taboo? Like any of the learnings that you've, because I think that the coolest part about the marketing that obviously you've owned,
Yeah,
being the CMO in some of these brands, it's you have this like cheat code
right, right.
where it's like, wow, we get to play in this sandbox over here
Yeah,
that's not as crowded and we can be a lot different. We can push the boundaries, like you were saying in that architectural example.
yeah.
Like you're only given this much space to talk about, like you're gonna go to the edges. And can is it even possible to do that? I guess is a first question for a brand that isn't taboo.
Mm,
Like let's just use prebiotic modern soda.
sure, sure.
Like, or is it just something like, hey, you just can't do that because that'll never work for a brand unless it's something that literally people are like, whoa, like that's weird or
Well, I think when
taboo.
you like, here's the thing: when you're restricted as to where you can uh, provide your marketing messaging, right? Um, you have you're limited in where and what you can say. So you have to say it differently. And one of the main ways you can do that successfully is by providing value outside of your core offering. And I think for dating, whether it's like giving dating advice, right, and
Mm,
helping people in other ways that maybe lead back to your product, or skincare, it's about confidence and manifestation and building up who you really are and
mm,
finding your true self leads back to your product with putting on a pimple
yeah,
patch and walking out the door. And I think same thing with soda, maybe whether it's prebiotics and educating people who hear the word prebiotic but don't know what the hell it is. Are
yeah,
they being educated as to what it is? And maybe it's a series of education about what's happening inside their gut,
yeah,
which is so prominent right now, leads back to their prebiotic soda. And I think if you can find other mediums to provide indirect value outside of your core offering,
yeah.
you have the ability to funnel back to your product and create trust and loyalty and
I was literally
community
gonna say the
around your
word
brand.
trust came to mind so much. I literally did a
Yeah.
solo episode just talking about how I believe truly that education is the best way to sell.
Yes. Yes. Especially in
Right.
today's age where every consumer, we call them, well, every consumer I would say is very informed. The informed consumer, they know what they're buying and they know what's inside their products. And if you're not telling them authentically and transparently what that is, you got no shot because someone
Mm.
else in the industry will.
Someone's gonna maybe use it against you. If
Exactly.
you don't own, which is
Exactly.
another great point that I didn't even think about, like, if you're not educating,
Yep.
then you're leaving it for someone else to educate them,
Yeah. Well,
and that person's not gonna have your best interest in mind most of the time.
every marketer wants to take their brand and show that classic table, us versus them, right? With all the ticks down your side and like, their side missing a few, or like to your point, saying, our competitors have this, we don't. So, I think if what they have is maybe
Is actually
negative,
tr
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
think it just depends on, what you're trying to show or hide. But I think in 2025, if you're not being transparent, informed consumers are going to find out very
Yeah.
quickly.
So talk about some of the ways you're doing that with Sesh, because even in our last conversation when we met up, I think you really are someone who thinks outside of the box. I noticed that immediately, even in the way you guys were thinking about how to educate a customer on something as simple as nicotine
Mm,
pouches,
mm.
which at face value, I'm like, what's there to be educated
Yeah,
about?
yeah,
Like truly, I was like,
yeah,
what are you gonna tell me for another 30 minutes that I don't know yet? So, and
yeah.
then the way you broke it down, I thought was so interesting, and not just the verbal education, but the visual stuff that you guys are doing, and
Mm, mm.
like, you're taking it to again, I think that what I've noticed, at least in our brief time knowing each other, is like you've been able to take these simple components and fundamentals and then just break them down even further and push them out even further to those edges.
Yeah, and I think that ties back to the education piece that you
Yeah.
brought up earlier,
Yeah.
and it's really about transparency for us. We're an independent brand in a massive industry up against big tobacco, and when it comes to massive companies, the big tobacco boys, uh, there's a lot of gray area. No one knows. There's no communication that's coming, frequently from these companies, unless it's like a highly prepared press release once or twice a year. I
Yeah.
think. Um, you don't know what with nicotine, you don't know what's in the pouch, what you're putting in your mouth. Sure, there are the ingredients on the box, but at the end of the day, if you want to understand, you know, what's in the pouch, what's the fleece that wraps the nicotine itself, like what is that? How does the nicotine release from the fleece? Why are some nicotine pouches dry? Why are some wet? I think there's an entire it's a fairly new industry as well. So are people meant to know about it if we don't tell them? And I think taking an expert educational stance within the industry and being really authentic to our customers around nicotine, which is again something that has been taboo for so long. But now you're talking about nicotine without tobacco. I
Mm.
think it's people want to know, like, what is this thing I'm putting in my lip 4, 5, 6, 8 times a
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
What's inside, and how can I know more? Why is this pouch different to another pouch? And I think when people are health conscious as well, they want to understand all the potential risks, and you have to be open about those too. Um, and to me, with Sesh, we're looking at introducing technology where anyone that buys a pouch should know exactly what's in it.
Mm.
And that means working with third party companies. There's a testing lab in Austin that we're working with to give consumers the ability to scan every can of nicotine that they buy and pull up a full ingredient list from a third party. So it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah. Just goes back to your whole point of trust and education, right?
Exactly,
You're
exactly.
just saying, hey, don't even believe us. Like, go to the source.
Exactly. Go to the
Yeah.
source. You can see it on the website. There'll be plugins where everything is open, and I think that's important because you know it's a very tricky industry. It's highly regulated,
Yeah.
and you have to be very careful with what you say. You're not allowed to say too much, and therefore sometimes it feels like there's this silence.
Yeah.
But if we can show other ways to be very
Open the black
educational,
box.
open it up, be accessible to our community as well, not just some you know corporate
Yeah.
hoodoo.
Behemoth
Yeah,
who's like,
exactly.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
there, talk to us. We want to let people in behind the scenes, see how we're doing this. Um, Even from a content perspective, like we want to bring cameras into the warehouse. Show people the facility, how we make these pouches, why we've chosen the fleece we have, um, how the nicotine releases consistently. There's so much we want to show people.
Yeah. I think you're in a really lucky and privileged seat to be able to invest in all those things. In your mind, like, how do you think about c- the CMOs that I've at least spoken to, more on the CPG side?
Hmm.
I think they struggle to showcase the value of some of the stuff you're doing to the rest of their team.
Mm.
Like, say you're going back to your CEO or CFO or founder and being like, "Hey, we want to spend money and time diving into
Yeah.
high quality content,
Hmm.
education, and I want to get into some of the IRL stuff too in a
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
like that, yeah, because I know you're such an amazing connector as well. So I think that's an important piece. It sounds like what you're doing with Sesh, but
Yeah.
just even simply from the content side, like everything you just talked about, I love because I'm like, wow, you're going deep. You're showing quality over quantity,
Hmm.
depth over surface level, um, and it's like the tenets and fundamentals of like what you really want to see from a brand. But I feel like a lot of people struggle to go back to the rest of their team. They're like, yo, nicotine pouch is going to work anyways. Let's just fucking sell it.
Right.
Like,
Right.
let's
Right.
just push it,
Right.
push the ads, push the marketing, get it into the hands, and that's
Yes.
all we have to worry about. Why do we have to show people how it's made? Why do we have to show people this, like, digital list of
Yeah.
sourcing
Yeah.
products when we're going to sell anyways because it's a hot market?
I think it's a great question. I think it's the way to look at it would be to look at the competitive landscape, right? And you've got the market leader in Zyn, who
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows has this wave of Zinfluencers on TikTok. There's this
Yeah.
bro culture
Yeah.
of frat boys and college guys who are obsessed with like zinning, and there's all these memes, and it's become such a part of culture. Similarly to how vapes did with young
Mm.
female TikTokers with like, "Where's my vape?" panic, you
Yeah.
know. And I think
Where's my
it's
vape panic?
yeah,
That's
it's
a
I mean
real thing.
it's a thing.
Yeah.
So you know, and pouches have really taken that over, right? If you know, pouches are doing to vapes what vapes did to cigarettes, and I think um, where that really gets interesting as a new brand coming into the market is differentiating yourself, right? And I think I actually am fortunate to be able to compare Zyn to Tinder in a way, but
Mm.
I'm now on the reverse side.
I
So
was gonna say that because Zin is creating the verb or whatever
correct.
the noun, whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, the noun.
Yeah.
Um, so you know, when I think of Tinder, and we were in the hot seat, and we were number one, and everyone's trying to catch us, and all these competitors pop up, and it's you know, women speak first, female empowerment,
Bumble, Hinge, this
Bumble,
and that.
Hinge, the
Yeah.
relationship app, Raya, the exclusive. Like, there's all these other ones that popped up and used Tinder's weakness, which was like mass,
Mm.
mass, I guess, users, and
Well,
you
by
kind of
the way,
get
that's a brilliant line. Like
yeah,
the weakness is mass
exactly,
sometimes.
exactly.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, this it happens in fast food, whether it's In-N-Out versus McDonald's, and it's the better quality
Dude,
fast
it happens
food.
to your soda and chips companies, right? We're seeing that on
Exactly.
anything in Erewhon is going after a mass player that's been stale.
Yeah, it's like
Or that's a
coffee after soda.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
happening everywhere. But for us in nicotine, you know, people have now been zinning for 5, 6, 7 years. They're aware of what it is. Um, but they didn't know they have a better option until now, right? And like if we can provide a premium pouch for the first time in the United States, because there aren't that many people that have licenses to sell these pouches in the United States. That's what makes this industry really interesting. And I think when you look at the, you know, the quality of the pouches across the board, some of them are okay, some of them are really
Mm-hmm.
not great, some of them are horrible, but there's nothing on the market right now in the United States that's a premium pouch that you get in Scandinavia or Europe, where they have a whole range and scale of pouches. And I think for us, coming in and showcasing why we're different and what makes us premium, whether it's the quality of our ingredients, the moisture in our pouches,
Yeah.
um, the flavor houses that we select our flavor palettes from. And I think all of these things combine to help increase someone's nicotine use and their experience with nicotine. Because for us, you know, you look at the things that people struggle with nicotine pouches, and it's the burn on the lips when they're
Mm-hmm.
putting it in constantly, or the flavor running out
Yeah.
in 5 minutes. And I think we managed to solve all of those things with, you know, added moistures to, you know, reduce gum irritation and friction on the gum, which is what we call in the industry an improved mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, long-lasting nicotine, which is a combination of our ingredients,
Yep.
a formula that we patented, and the properties within the fleece that we've selected. So, you know, you've got this 30-minute release consistently versus some pouches are gone in 5 minutes. Um, and I think that for us is key and at the consumer level, right? Because you're getting quite technical at this point, even with a
Yeah.
little white pouch that you
Yeah.
think is just, you know, bit of cotton wrapped around nicotine.
Yeah.
No, it's like way more than that. And I think how you bring that to the consumer at like the average consumer level so they can digest it easily and understand why the pouches are different, that's the challenge, and that's what we have to overcome. But you know, once we do that, like you said, we know these things are going to sell.
And that's so brilliant from a content perspective. So I appreciate you drilling down on that. How do you take that and then complement what I think you've also done a really good job in, which also falls under the world of just marketing generally, is like I feel like you're someone who's really good at curating like a vibe and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like really creating energy
Mm-hmm.
around something that's
Yeah.
hard to just like point out and be like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But there's an aura around it.
Right.
It's
Right.
fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like you've and I don't know if that was, you know, part of what you've done in your past gigs at Tinder, Zitstick, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but how do you think about like generating that energy and like what makes that become real?
Yeah.
Because I know there's a ton of transactional ways to try to do it.
Yeah.
And like in my personal belief, like I don't care for that as much.
Sure. Sure.
Like you want that authentic,
Right.
like real energy and be like, wow, I want to be a part of, and you mentioned earlier, like almost like identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
be seen holding, you have the pouch with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be seen holding that,
Exactly. And
right? And like why is that? Yeah.
that's a good point,
Why is
right?
that
Like
cool? Yeah.
you look at like you know, It's exactly what you're talking about is what we were able to do with Tinder, with Zitsticker,
Yeah.
and now with Sesh. I think,
I mean, the branding's cool too.
s-
That
thank
got
you.
that going for it.
To me, the
Yeah.
the short answer is people, right? And I think if you can,
Mm.
I don't even want to use the word curate. If you can bring in the right people who are authentically interested in your brand, and there's a difference between just bringing in or curating people who are cool, who can influence others, right? Like
Yeah.
we've got a whole ecosystem of influencers to do that. But I think where it becomes truly momentous is when you bring in people who authentically believe in the product, the right people who authentically believe, and that's the real combination
Mm.
that I think
Yeah.
solves exactly what you're talking about. Um, at Tinder, we actually launched the dating app as if it was a fashion label, a fashion product. That's how we looked at it
I
internally,
didn't realize that.
and it's
Yeah.
called top down marketing, right? And we only it was a free app on the App Store, but we only released it to a few people, and we only
Mm.
gave it to certain people who we knew if they were on board, you know, or in the certain environments, right? College and cool kids on college campuses where you've got the most highly charged social environment on the planet, a college
Yeah.
campus, where
Yeah.
technically you don't need a dating app or an app that connects two people.
Yeah.
But if we could get those influential kids on college, and this was before the word influencer was ever even created, this was
But it was
2012.
influence.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, we've
influence.
talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
influence to me and cool become just useless when you actually say the words, right?
Yeah.
Influence and cool. I
Yeah. Yeah.
think to me, there's a way to subtly uh, bring these products into people's day to day and find the people who you know will authentically use them, love them, and promote them. There's nothing more valuable than word of mouth marketing. Nothing. You
Yeah.
can spend billions of
So funny. I
dollars.
literally did a solo episode yesterday where I just spent 20 minutes talking about how I thought
Yeah,
word of mouth marketing
yeah.
is the most invaluable. It's so human
It's
and real and credible.
I
It's
can see billboards, Instagram ads. I can
yeah.
see
But when you're here
anything.
telling me like, bro, use this and like this is so amazing. It's
Yeah,
better than the rest and
yeah.
everything else you would say, I'm like, wow,
If
like
I see
it's
10
authentic.
trailers for a movie, if I see a movie poster on a billboard, if I see
Yeah.
it on bus stops everywhere, I might think it's cool. But if you tell me it's a great movie, I'm going to go see it.
Yeah.
So I think, word of mouth marketing to me is really uh, probably the short answer to your question there. Is like
Yeah.
how do you make any product cool? I think hopefully the product works, but I've
Yeah.
seen it being done with products that don't work,
Yeah.
and they're still
And that's like the top-down marketing thing is really interesting too. I feel like that's another concept which, if you're explaining to more of someone who's like a traditional business owner or like thinking about just scale at any
yeah,
cost, they're
yeah,
like, why would you go for that top market? But you see companies like Uber, it was the same thing.
yeah.
I think right when they went like Uber
Oh,
Black
you nailed it,
first,
nailed it
because people were
exactly.
like, we don't really need this. We have taxis.
It was
But then there's this community and cohort
yeah,
of individuals, to your point,
yeah,
being authentic, being able to be the ambassadors,
yeah.
and
And
then you see them
and
doing
not
it.
just cohorts, anyone. Like Uber was genius because it was I'm taking a girl I like on a date.
Yeah,
I want to impress her with a black car, not a taxi.
yeah,
Or, we just closed the deal. Let's go for dinner. Let's take the black car. Or
yeah,
let's,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think Uber did such a great job at that. And then all of a sudden there's Uber X. And it's like the way even they named it, Uber X means, oh, that's the standard one, which means, oh, there's Uber Black. That's even cooler. And I think, that they found their model and their price points. But um, it reminds me of an interesting story. We having our biggest issue that we faced at Tinder was hookup culture. And we were known as the fuck app basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And everyone they came to me and they were like, how
It's
do we
like
solve this?
transactional. It's not like
Well, what do we
yeah,
do if we're the shitty hookup app and everyone else has their own thing? Like, how do we change perception? And to change perception at almost a global level is very, very difficult. My answer was, let's release Tinder X, Tinder for hookups, because all of a sudden you do that and it's like, well, hang on, if Tinder X is for
then
hookups,
what's
what's Tinder
yeah,
for? It's just for people to meet each other. What they do with the connection's up to them. We don't give them a wedding ring and a white picket fence or a hotel room and a condo.
yeah.
They go and do it themselves. So yeah, anyway, I'm
I
with
love
you.
that. I have so many questions on that strategy, but I have another question I think related to that.
Yeah,
So you think about some of these mass companies, and again, Tinder at a certain point was a mass company,
yeah,
and then you have like the mass companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And to use that analogy that we've been
mm,
going off of, like better for you soda, like I think it was like Pepsi or Coca-Cola recently came out with like an Ollie or
yeah, yeah,
whatever poppy competitor.
yes,
Um, but I think that's the strategy that they were trying to use. Like, hey, but doesn't that? I'm wondering if that's like ever can be real because it's just still so inauthentic to me.
Have you noticed, I'm going to interrupt you
Yeah, yeah, no,
intentionally.
go for
Have
it.
you noticed the full circle that's happened with the prebiotic sodas? We've talked about them a little bit today, but
Yeah,
um, there's a full circle that's happened here with prebiotic sodas where the sodas were an intentional move away from a cola or Coca-Cola product, right? This is this healthier soda
yeah,
for you.
yeah,
And what did Poppy just release? A cola flavor.
yeah.
So in a funny way, they've gone full circle now, and that's really just marketing, right? All of a
Mm,
sudden, here's something, and who knows what's really better for you or healthier? I have
yeah,
no idea,
it's
but
we're just believing whatever
it's
we're
just funny,
fed.
and you'll see the same thing with other products as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
with Sesh, to go back to your other point, which again, it's just all of this is so interesting because I don't think your typical run of the mill brands think like this, and
yeah,
that's why I was so excited to have you here. Is more so of like so you mentioned one of your points was like bringing authentic people into the fold
yes,
and let them kind of speak to the brand. They hold that energy, so they'll attract more of that energy.
right, right,
Are you doing that just from like is that hires plus influencers plus the how do you kind of judge the different channels you're tapping into as a marketer?
yeah.
And what does that look like in reality of like bring because it's easy to say like let's bring authentic people in,
Yeah, I
right?
think
And every
you.
influence like, oh, I see a if I have a travel business, I'm looking at, oh, these are like 10 authentic travel
Right,
influencers. Is
right.
it that or is it are you like sitting with them and meeting them? Like what's the level of tacticality that goes into this?
I think it's such an interesting one to try and explain out loud because
Yeah, yeah.
oftentimes it's just a feeling and you know it, right? And I think
That's what I
that
figured too.
comes, well, yeah, but there are ways, there are data
Yeah.
points within that
Yeah.
where you can pull out information about someone based on how they either choose to represent themselves, be it on social media or in real life. Um, you also learn to understand quickly who can walk the walk and talk the talk, and once you've been in this industry long enough. And I think when you when you can pick up on these little things, and I think it's knowing how to read people, knowing how to listen, I think has been one of the most important things that I've been able to
Mm,
really hone. It's a skill that uh, in business especially, or whether it's bringing on a key hire and understanding, was it someone who really did impact a company, or is it someone who is claiming to impact a company, or was it someone um, who can actually achieve the goals that they have shown on their resume, or is it just words on paper? And I think those things they're probably hard to explain, but they're feelings you get when you sit across a table from someone and listen to them speak about themselves, and then also how they listen to what you're saying. And
mm,
I think listening to me has been the key thing for finding talent, and also finding people who can help you from whether it's from an investment perspective, a mentor perspective, um, or a partner perspective.
mhm.
Yeah.
I may be speaking for you when I say this, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like you live a very full life outside of
Mm,
just your day to day too.
hmm.
Like, being in the worlds of culture and commerce and, from as far as I know you, I feel like
Yeah.
you're in all the places, you want to be.
Yeah.
You're living a very full life. How much do you think that actually helps you become a better marketer? Because I also talk to a lot of founders or entrepreneurs, whatever, even at larger companies or smaller companies that
Yeah.
I think try to like over engineer like what they're doing on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis
Yeah.
and sometimes forget like just sitting at a desk and just reading trends and data points. And I don't want to say anything, there's so much importance in data and
Yeah.
insights.
Yeah.
I personally am not, trusting that more than my intuition,
Sure.
which I
Sure.
feel like it's probably similar to you, but to a degree, I feel like a lot of the stuff you do outside, especially in marketing roles,
Hmm.
right? Which
Hmm.
is different
Hmm.
than like being a coder or something else. But like
Yes.
in marketing roles, how important is it to just be you and do the things you do as a person outside of your like title and job
Yeah.
that actually drive growth and success for the business?
I think there's been a lot of success or opportunities that have come to fruition for me through social activity. And I don't think it's ever intended. I
Mm,
never leave the house thinking, I'm going to this city or I'm going to this event in order to achieve this business goal or this networking goal. Like that's never the case. The case for me has always been this almost innate desire to meet my like-minded people. Sorry, when you're living a full life, right? And I think you're putting in as much effort into your social life, your relationships,
Hmm.
your work, and you've got a good balance.
Yeah.
I think people pick up on that, and there's almost an energy to it. And I think a lot of introductions that have been made to me or for me have been based off, even a one-time dinner where you have like a great meeting with someone. Like you and I, we met
Yeah.
for
We met it.
one dinner,
Yeah. Yeah.
we hung out a bunch after, and now I'm sitting across the room from you on a podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that happens unless you put yourself out there. And I think
Mm.
uh, it's easier for some people than not. Introvert, extrovert, you can call it what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think when you put yourself out there, because you have a desire to be social, meet people, understand what they're doing, how are they maneuvering through the world, picking up on their traits of success and what they're doing. And it's not like you're walking around with a pad and a piece of paper, or sorry, a pen and a piece of paper. You're just trying to understand.
Yeah.
Um, or have a natural interest in what other people are doing. And I think people recognize that. And when you're at these dinners and you're asking these questions, or you're, introduced to someone by a friend, and you have a genuine interest in what they're doing, what they've built, how they found success, who they're interested in, what inspires them. I
Yeah.
think those things really resonate with people, and people want to help as well. I think when you're quiet and you sit on the fence, no one knows what you're doing, and they don't want to help because you haven't opened your mouth. So I
Yeah.
think there's a,
Yeah.
a balance
It's
between.
true.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy how true that is. And even with, it's funny you say like extroverts and introverts, but I feel like I've always thought I still do think I am an extrovert,
Mm,
but and like now I have a son and we have another baby coming.
yeah,
I'm thinking like a lot of that was manufactured earlier on, but I even feel like for many introverts, which I feel a part of that side coming out in me too, but that's also activated when you're speaking about things you care about.
sure,
Because
sure.
then you all of a sudden you become an extrovert again.
Yes,
Like my wife is still like I love her to death, but she, would openly say like, "Hey, I'd rather just be with the people I love,
sure,
and I don't want
sure.
to go expose myself to others."
Or you
But
get her talking about her passions, and sure,
yes, and
yeah,
then you meet other, but that's how you meet other people who
right,
also connect to that.
right,
And it's the same thing with a brand, right? When you get authentic and when you start speaking about the
yeah.
qualities of it that really inspire you, you're coming from a place of truth,
I
and
think the
people can connect to it.
entrepreneurial landscape as well within these communities, cohorts of
Hmm.
co-founders or investors. There's it's a really American trait that I've noticed as an Australian. People have this like
Yeah,
beautiful desire to help each other. It doesn't happen in Australia. There's a syndrome called tall poppy syndrome in Australia, where there's almost this like undercurrent of jealousy. If you're doing well and I'm doing well, you kind of just like,
tall
oh,
poppy
a
syndrome.
tall poppy syndrome. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like you end up like kind of just staying in your own lanes. Whereas in America,
Mm,
people, they want to make introductions, they want to help. Oftentimes they don't need anything in return. It's just like, hey, you should meet so and so. You're both working in the same industry. You're gonna
yeah.
jam, and
There's
go
almost a
go
high you
crush it.
get off of that too when you connect to great people. At least me, when
I
I'm
loved
a
it. Oh
connector
my
too,
god,
but I'm
it's the
like,
best.
fuck yeah, come to me in 6 months and tell me what you guys created together, right? Because
Love
like
that. And I think that's
that's
like a beautiful thing
yeah,
within the entrepreneurial landscape. People want to help each other. And the introductions that, I also think when you give someone a good energy, a good time, you have fun together, whether it's a dinner, you're, at someone's birthday or whatever it is, if you have a good time, people, they like you, they want to see you again, they want to hear more about you,
hmm,
they want to be part of your circle, and they want to support your business and your product. And I
mm,
think that's also really interesting for me is, the amount of people, I'll put some like, I don't have a big Instagram following, but I'll put something up online and about Sesh, and the amount of like positive comments I get back. It's
yeah,
astounding. Like, love the branding. Can't wait to try. Can you send me some? I'd quit vaping for this. So much better than Zyn. It's just like,
yeah,
it's great. It's heartwarming. You love
yeah,
that. In Australia, it's a little different.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny as shit. I
yeah.
didn't even think about it like that, but you probably come from such a bit different culture
Yeah,
there
very,
too.
very, very. I mean, I've been here 10 years, but it's
Yeah.
it's different for sure.
Um, another, I think you talked a lot about like putting yourself out there and getting inspiration from those amazing, authentic people.
Mm.
Do you derive any information from other brands that you feel like have
Oh,
been super inspirational to you? Maybe like bigger
yeah.
brands and
You should see
who?
my phone. Every single social platform, I have multiple folders of like ad creative ideas, great
Yeah.
copy. I
So
have,
talk about that. What are you seeing right now that's like,
mm.
fuck, that's dope. Like I need to take a page out of that book.
You know what I think is crazy at the moment? Gone are the days where a brand has one social media manager, and they are running my Instagram account, and that's generating all my leads and, bringing me most of my business.
Hmm.
Gone. I think with the algorithms the way they are now, the promotion of any type of content by any type of creator, no matter how big or small, right? It used to be about engagement of big accounts. It's not about that anymore. Now, if brands don't have, and this is going to sound crazy, but if brands don't have 30 TikTok accounts, 30 Instagram accounts, 30 Twitter accounts, trying all different types of content and trying to hit it from every different angle, directly, indirectly,
Yeah.
educational, direct promotion of the, you're not, someone else is doing it, your competitors are doing it, you're going to lose. It's blowing my mind the way people, and obviously there's the use of AI that's helping facilitate the management of these multi-platform,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like,
multi-accounts.
because that could sound daunting at first. You're like, "Fuck, I
Oh
gotta
yeah,
do
30
this
accounts or
90."
90 accounts across
Yeah, for
three
3 platforms.
platforms. Like,
But so there's now technology that helps you do that.
oh, of course, yeah,
Okay.
AI can help you build, you know, 10 platforms in minutes and post a variety of copy and creative across all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And you can see
You're
which
about to
ones
see
hit.
me everywhere after today.
Yeah,
Now that I know
yeah,
that AI can do
hope
this,
so. Let's
I'm
blow up the
fucking in it.
podcast. Let's go. We'll have
But
an audience in minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's interesting. So you're seeing that a lot for
That's one thing that's really
have you done this with Sesh yet, or you guys are working on it? Or?
building it,
Yeah.
building it. So we're at a place this year where our major goal is to get our pouches and our cans on major retailer shelves. We need to get our cans on shelves in order for people to be able to go and buy them.
Yeah.
Nicotine is predominantly purchased in store. 90% of purchases are made at the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, I think it's really important that people hear about us, and because I can go and pump all sorts of influencers, social, I can do all sorts of things
Yeah.
and create these accounts and start this marketing engine now. But if people hear about us, see me online, but then they can only get us on our online store, great, that solves it for a lot of people. What about someone who's just filling up gas, wants to grab their can, and the only thing there is our competitors? I don't want to drive sales for competitors. I'd rather wait till we're on the shelves because we're a very, very new brand.
Yeah.
But the
And
good
then
news,
wait to act when you have the distribution.
exactly. But the
Yeah.
good news is we've like signed, the majority of our key account targets, and so, halfway through the year we'll be,
You'll be in enough
yeah,
places to
yeah,
turn those initiatives on.
yeah, yeah.
What other brands are inspiring to you? Or
Um,
what and by the way, not even just inspiring to you, who do you think is doing marketing
right,
right?
right, yeah,
Yeah.
fair. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Seed.
Yeah.
Have you seen the prebiotic
Yeah,
pill?
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Um, I love what they're doing. They're a lot of I see a lot of similarities between their small capsule and our small pouch. They've
Yeah.
got this highly technical double layered capsule with multiple different ingredients and reasons why to navigate the stomach acid so it doesn't just break down. And they do a great job at explaining their technical terms to the
Mhm.
average consumer. And I have to do the same thing. We have the same challenge. We have a very technical nicotine pouch with a lot of design to not only the formulation and the blend, but the fleece and the pouch itself. And we have to tell people about that in an easy way for them to understand.
Mhm.
And so I love what they're doing and how they're doing it and their visuals and their packaging. It's all like highly, highly premium and minimal, but it's screaming very loudly.
Mhm.
And I love that.
Yeah. So, what's interesting on seed actually that now that you mention it is this is what I've had because I come from like at least with platform, we're our thought process comes from taking a brand and really then making it relatable to the
Yeah.
masses,
Yeah.
right? So almost taking that reverse engineering of what you've talked about for a
Yeah.
while, which
Yep.
is initially you want to get that top down influence
Yeah.
because you're looking at it, it's aspirational, it's inspiring, it comes all the way down to mass America.
Right. Right. Right.
But from a distribution standpoint, now you have to build it back up, right? Because typically you're building from those smaller chains, the Erewhons, the Whole Foods,
Yes.
unless you're like a Mr. Beast and where you're going everywhere at once.
Sure.
Typically you're doing, slow and steady wins the race,
Mhm.
win communities, and then grow. Win communities and grow. Win
Right.
retailers and grow to
Right.
bigger
Right.
ones.
Right.
But when you think about a seed, and I don't think my opinion is right or wrong. This is just my observation.
Yeah.
Is Seed, I think, is when I saw one of their recent launches, I think they still have a very technical um, way of marketing, even at like a Target, which was interesting. And I don't know if it's doing well or not, so I can't speak
Right.
to
Right.
like the
Right.
performance. But my personal opinion on that was like I always think of my parents because they're such easy targets when you
Right.
think of like a mass consumer.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, what would my parents think? Like if they walk by this in their Walmart or
Yeah. Ooh,
Target,
that's nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it I don't think the education and maybe this I don't think is as comparable to Sesh because
Mm.
we're talking about like more of a supplement, but I don't think that depth of education is relatable
Right. Right.
to your mass consumer because like my parents walking by would be like, what is a DS01
Yes.
symbiote like
Yes.
whatever it is
I think you're
I,
spot on. I think you're spot
right?
on. There's
And then
so,
you only have 6 seconds though, right, to capture that person's interest.
if that.
But if there was like uh poop more or something like
Yeah.
whatever, like
Yeah,
better
yeah, yeah.
shits or
So
like
that's
cleaner gut,
so that I
whatever it
think a
is.
lot of maybe on the shelf it's very hard to do that
Yeah.
because on the shelf you've got a tiny little strip and that's all you got to market. And yeah,
Right.
if you see like DS1 or like you're like, what
And
is
that's what I
that?
think about, and not to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
think the cool part about what you're saying is you're hitting at both angles where you can actually tap this once you own the
Yeah.
product
Yeah.
or whatever it was that you were saying, and then be brought into
Yeah.
the narrative
Well, I could tell you
and
a bit about that.
ecosystem. Yeah.
That's a little different. So what when you look at nicotine and tobacco,
Yeah.
quite an antiquated space, right? In that everyone's these big tobacco companies, they're slow moving, not so dynamic. We're coming in as this sort of like modern independent company that can make quick decisions, move fast, and bring new technology to the industry. And that's one of the things we're working with a company called
Yeah. I spoke to, yeah, yeah, I
Verify.io.
spoke to
Yeah, you spoke to
great
Verify. Oh,
guys.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
You did.
Matt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt. So
I
Verify
think I
is
had to move
really.
this call today for this. So
Oh, really?
if
Yeah,
Matt's
I saw
listening,
that.
sorry.
I'm still on the email, by the way.
Yeah.
But Verify is really interesting because what they're doing is they're bringing all sorts of like inventory management systems to CPG, and that's why I thought they'd be a
Hmm.
good mix for you guys. But with us, we want to put NFC smart tags under the labels of our cans
So
so
cool.
that any
Yeah.
physical can turns into a digital smart product automatically. And like I told you earlier, 90% of my customers are walk in, they purchase my nicotine pouches, they leave the store. I know nothing about them.
Yep.
But now, if I can build in loyalty reward programs, exclusive content, offers, discounts, promos into a tap, same as Apple Pay, you tap the can. I can all of a sudden capture audience data. I can learn where they are, when they purchase their pouches. I just get information about my audience and my customers that I never had
Yeah, because
prior
you're
to
not
that.
you don't know anything when
And
a
not just
person's going
me.
to fill up their gas and pick up the
Exactly.
pouches.
And not just me who's blind. All the marketers in the industry are blind. You get a couple reports every now and then, but a lot of the time you're stabbing in the dark. I can get direct first party data here. That's, ground zero data about everything I need to know, how to retarget my customer, what they like, their flavors, and then I can incentivize them based on their habits and try
Hmm.
and help them further in their journey with nicotine. So it's a really exciting opportunity for us to work with those type of companies. Also help with inventory management remotely from afar. I can understand when my retailers are running low, when to restock, how much I've got left in the warehouse, like all from my phone.
Mm,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I feel like
So
that's gonna be way more prevalent in the future to be able to communicate with your customer like that.
yeah, well, imagine tapping a nicotine can with your phone
Yeah.
after you purchase it. It brings up a full page video of some celebrity you're obsessed with, that telling you if you buy
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
more, you have access to
Incredible.
behind the stage at my concert or whatever it is, VIP
Yeah.
tickets to my show.
And
Uh,
that's what's cool. And I feel like maybe that's the answer to what we were saying is like you give them an easier way to buy, like using my parents, like they're
yeah,
walking by, maybe it's more simple marketing at first, but if they are really curious and if the brand stands for the education of their product and their efficacy and all that, there's
yeah,
another way to dive deeper
yeah,
once you have the product in your hand
totally.
without needing to go and like research it online.
I mean, when you've only got a small space to work in and you have to win at a shelf level, you
Yeah.
have to
Especially
try
at
and
gas station where it's even smaller, right? It's
oh,
like
it's
this, you have a box.
even
That's about
smaller
it.
and it's further away. It's behind a clerk
Yep.
in the tobacco bar. It's called the back bar, right? And
Yeah.
it's back there for a
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
So playing in those playing in those spaces is tricky,
Yeah.
but that's the sort of red tape that makes the challenge really fun and worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because whether it's a tap to win or buy two save $4, or there's so many ways that you can attract a customer's interest, um, and by being different, right, to the competition in ways that they haven't thought of yet or they can't do yet because of all the process they have to go through
Yep.
to implement something that we can do in a few months time.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
How do you guys think of like sampling and how important is that? Like product in hand, product in mouth.
It's everything. In energy drinks, there's a strategy called cans in hand.
Yeah,
Like
liquid to lips.
exact, like
Yeah.
liquid to lips, cans in hand. We have a similar approach. The difference for us is we legally have to sell the cans. There has to be a monetary exchange, and we have to age gate and make sure everyone's over 21.
Mm,
It's just because of the higher regulations within the industry. But if we can, get past that, so any place that originally or already does age gating, whether it's a bar or somewhere that checks ID, so we know everyone inside that building is over
mm,
21, like a bar or a lounge or something, that's an easy place for us to sample.
yeah.
But there still needs to be a monetary exchange. So oftentimes we'll do dollar cans, which is great because usually these things are $5, $6. So if someone can buy a can or two or three cans for two,
Hmm.
$3, they're loving it. And that's a quick way for us to get a lot of cans. And we have
In
like,
hands, yeah.
certain targets this year for how many cans we want to get in hands and make sure that, people try this product, because we know that when people try Sesh, they don't go back to Zin or something else.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And think and sticking on that subject of sampling and like cans in hands, how do you kind of think about mass events like festivals and things like that versus more like
Mm.
grassroots, like Sesh personally is going to host an event
Yeah.
and throw a little, I think you were saying like around like local convenience stores or
Sure.
gas stations, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
How do you balance those two when you have a finite amount of resources to go after the market?
Yeah. I think everything I do is put through a very, very strict regulatory lens. So
Mm,
when it comes to festivals, sure, but how do you ensure everyone's over 21 at this festival, right? So like maybe if you're doing something at a festival, you've got your own setup somewhere. And I like to own our own setups. Maybe it's a sesh tent or maybe it's a sesh stage or
yeah, where
something
you
where
can actually check or verify.
I
Yeah,
can feel like I control the
yeah,
audience and I make sure they're of age and it's adults that we're targeting.
yeah.
It's just very, very important with the industry. If you're not familiar with what happened to Jewel, I implore everyone to do their education on that one.
I just know it
And
from like headlines.
yeah,
Yeah.
and watch the Netflix documentary Up in Smoke. It tells you everything they did. They essentially tried to do a photo shoot. Well, they did a lot of things wrong, but one of the main things was they had a lot of young, attractive models
Hmm.
holding up the jewel pens against a white wall, kind of like a fashion shoot.
Yeah.
Um, and it was called Vaporized, the campaign, and there was massive blowback because it looked like they were targeting youth, and Jewel, lost
Probably work.
billions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, Jewel.
Yeah.
It was every teenager in the world was smoking
Yeah.
Jewels, but you can't be targeting those audiences, and we have to be very careful and responsible. We also want to be the adult in the room in this industry. A lot of it is youth who are, nicotine is often a gateway drug. Tobacco, we want to change that. We don't want people to uh, think that it's just kids picking up these things. And when you open a sesh can, it's actually quite hard to open. The
Hmm.
label, it acts as a child lock,
Yeah.
and we have to be responsible. We have to be,
It's interesting.
yeah, stringent on how we approach it.
Yeah. Huh. So yeah, so when you think about any types of events, right, you're going through that lens in the first place. So
Yeah,
that kind of like gates the amount of stuff you can actually go and do,
totally.
unlike like energy drinks or
Yeah, and I
anything
think
like
like,
that.
we did a bunch of work at ACL recently
Yep.
in Austin. We had a big sesh truck trailer set up with,
Yeah.
um, all sorts of sodas and whatnot, which was great. And people were like walking into the festival, boiling hot, picking up a soda, getting a can for $1, checking their ID,
Yeah.
in and out, beautiful. Right. And we distributed so many cans. It was a 3-day festival. We had people coming back second day, third day. Please can I have some more, bringing their friends, bringing their girlfriends, partners, whatever, trying to get more sesh because they were like, wow, this is such a better product than
Mm.
what I'm used to. And that's really what I love about this opportunity and what I love about the word of mouth marketing that we talked about
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Because if you can provide a better product, the word of mouth of marketing carries you tenfold further than any piece of copy, creative strategy will ever do. And I
Hmm.
think that's where Sesh is really positioned to take on the pouch market
Mm.
uh, quite strongly because we do have the best product.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. How important, and this is probably one of the final topics I really want to cover with you, but how important is an emotional connection to the brand
Hmm.
when you think about like when you have your CMO hat on,
Yeah.
and really just to hopefully answer this for other people listening is like in my opinion, I've always loved feeling like a part of that brand or the identity. And as a consumer with so many choices, you're typically buying into something bigger than just a product.
Right. Right.
Um, and bringing seed back as an exist again, personal opinion, maybe they're doing it right and I don't see it. But most of the people that I know that use seed use it because of its functionality.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I don't really see people talking about seed in a way that they feel emotionally connected to the
Right.
brand,
Right. Right.
and would love your thoughts on, even does that even matter? Like maybe you're like, who cares if
I
it's
think
doing well, it
yeah,
does well.
I think
Like
it definitely matters. I think who knows what you and I are being targeted with, right? Like for
that's
me,
the other
I
thing.
see,
Like
like, are you bloating? Are you sick of dad bod? Do you have stomach pain? Like those are the things, and I have no idea why they're targeting me with
Yeah.
that. But those
Yeah.
things are must be broken algorithms.
Yeah.
But those things to me, coming from a
Yeah.
technical product like Seed, I'm like, okay, hat off to you as a marketer.
Mm.
I'm like, hang on, like I have felt bloated. I do see this technical
So you're
product
you're saying yes in your head.
in
You're
my
like,
head.
yes.
Yes,
You're like,
yes.
yes, I feel bloated.
That's not going to
Yes.
resonate with everyone, and that's on the company and the marketing team's job to figure out how to resonate with the different cohorts they're targeting. I think
Yeah.
emotional connections are incredibly important, right? You look at let's go back to sportswear for a second. Nike, Adidas, um, Under Armour, right? Call them the three big ones in that space. And then now, or in shoes specifically. Now you look at On, Hoka, these companies that are carving out not just small slices of the pie, but massive
Hmm.
slices, and they're coming in and taking not only mind share and revenue, but they're taking hearts away from like loyal lifetime Nike and Adidas customers, right? And they're doing it through content, they're doing it through strategy, they're doing it through a brand promise as well
Hmm.
of being better, being for you, and each of them have their own strategies.
Hmm.
And I think those type of brands, they're new brands in massive spaces that are creating emotional connections with audiences who were previously very loyal to massive companies, and that says it all right there to
Hmm.
me. If we can do that in nicotine, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your point of like even when you're thinking about Hinge or Raya and how they took a piece of Tinder's
Yeah,
community. It's because they picked one thing to go to have that heartstring for
yeah,
that one thing. And some people really care about exclusivity.
yeah,
Some people really care about the depth of relationship,
absolutely.
right? And I think when you can grab that, then you've built that emotional connection. The
Yeah,
reason I ask is because in CPG products, like again, I don't want to bash on. I actually I've used Seed a ton, so I love their product. But I think the just using that example, like what happens when you put Seed next to another brand that comes out that has
mm,
just as much functionality or more,
right, right.
if that switch is easy to make, then I feel like that brand hasn't built enough emotional connection with you,
Sure,
right? And I think
sure,
we see that a lot with food and bev brands and all of those, because I think if you don't make that connection, it's not that hard for another brand to come in and make the same thing
sure.
when your moat is not around some patent that is impossible to make. Another good example is like Goli. Do you remember those apple cider vinegar gummies? Red.
What are
They
they
were called
called?
Goli,
Goalie.
Goli.
Okay. Oh yeah, of course,
Huge,
of course.
huge
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
business.
yeah.
It was like out of nowhere,
Yep.
and honestly, pretty good product, but a huge business. But I think that the big miss there was this emotional connection. They grew so quickly to a huge mass product that they never took those steps to really build that connection.
Yes.
And what very quickly happened after is some of the bigger retailers came in with their own version of apple cider vinegar
Right,
gummies
right,
and
right.
priced it $5 less.
Yeah. And
And
I
that
think where
switch
you're
means like, hey, there was no interest investment in
correct.
Goli as a brand.
I think with that example specifically, and with a lot of these companies let's just call them internet companies that
Yeah.
have the D2C wave, it started with the Dollar Shave Clubs
Yeah.
and all of them, and
Great
now it's
example.
like, any man and their dog can just pop a label on a product and sell it, right? And I think
Yeah.
these internet brands, they rise and fall so fast because, like you said, there's no emotional connection. And it might be there for a second, but these informed consumers, to tie a lot of our different topics together today, these informed consumers are aware of these like pump and dump brands that are coming in. They don't think they're going to be dumped themselves, these brands. But if you see, okay, I see this brand absolutely everywhere, a million ads a day on every platform, there's a part of you that feels it almost dehumanizes the brand,
Yes.
the ad,
That's what I was getting at.
everything.
Yeah.
Whereas like, but it happens at the same time with Nike, and I think where you're 100% right about new brands coming in and maybe the old brand not developing enough of an emotional connection. I think it's also coupled with where we're at as individuals in a
Mhm.
in a, a content consuming society, right? Where you have so much and your attention span is so small right now that these big legacy brands that have had emotional connection with you for years, growing up
Yeah.
playing soccer or football and choosing Nike over Adidas your whole life, but then losing that connection to a newcomer out of nowhere. I think it's also coupled with us and our sense of urgency and impatience as a society now, with the just sheer and vast amount of content and distraction we have in our day to day. And
Mm.
I think it all kind of like works together.
Yeah. And maybe to end on just a couple future topics of
Mm.
like, where do you see this industry going now in terms of just consumer goods.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
regardless of fashion,
yeah,
CPG,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
or even Sesh, in the world of marketing, where, given that that's the seat you sit in every day, where
Mm.
is that world going in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, we saw a wave of like, you know, the get woke as a brand. You know, that's that kind of not where Jaguar was a good example, even though
Mhm.
they actually I think got a ton of press just by
Yeah,
being that
yeah,
extreme.
yeah,
Um, are there any like major trends that you see like, hey, these are good trends to capitalize on as someone who maybe is looking to
yeah.
build brand awareness?
I think if I wasn't in the nicotine space with
Yeah,
pouch. Oh my God. If I wasn't in the
yeah,
nicotine
yeah,
space with Sesh pouches, I would be all over AI in every single way possible. I think it's something that fascinates me at a very, very deep level.
yeah.
Even platforms that exist to help AI specialists with founders who have no idea what the hell they're doing in AI. Something as simple as that. I think the rise of software as a solution to quite literally anything is going to be what comes next for CPG, right? So instead of just focusing on distribution and getting your product on its shelf, things we talked about earlier, like offering value outside of your core product offering. What is that? Is that an app that helps you with your sleep because you're buying a sleep pillow? Is it whatever it is? Like I think those things are going to come thick and fast, and products are going to come with additional software and technology.
Interesting.
And I think
Yeah.
and they can also be run by much smaller teams. So I think you're going to start to see the rise of, individually run $1 billion
Business.
companies, right? With
Yeah.
one employee that has multiple products.
AI agents kind of doing different pieces of the
Yeah.
puzzle for them.
Yeah. So I think you're going to start to see much smaller teams. You're going to start to see
Does that scare you or just excite you?
Um, it scares me on a social level and excites
Yeah.
me on a level of commerce because I
Mm.
think you're going to be able to achieve a lot more
Yeah.
business wise, but socially it petrifies the hell out of me because we're all going to be sitting indoors and never seeing each other again.
Yeah.
So that one scares me, but I do think products and CPG products are going to start to have to provide value in addition to their physical. And I think
Mm.
if they're sitting on a shelf and just pumping social ads, it's not going to be enough in a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to do a lot more, whether it's, and content is currently the answer, but I think software is going to be the next solution.
Yeah. And that's really interesting coming from a marketer,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what makes you think different. But dude, I appreciate the time here.
Yeah. Of
This was
course.
amazing.
That was
Like
great.
amazing tidbits of information that I
Yeah.
don't think people think. You're coming from such a unique lens of, call it taboo brands or stigma brands,
Yeah.
whatever, but there's so much learnings and sound bites from that you can actually, I feel like even from this conversation,
Yeah.
still apply
Yeah.
to other
It's kind of
brands to
like
help
the
them.
overload principle. It's like
Yeah.
training with ankle weights on, and then you can
Yes.
take the ankle weights off and
And
go
you're like,
do
whoa,
them.
it run fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Dude, I appreciate the time,
Of
man. This
course.
was great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
love being here.